Good evening, everybody. I have a minute to 7 yet, although the computer says 7. So I guess we'll begin. I have...
Just getting everything ready for YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready to go.
All right, thank you. So good evening, everybody, to our council meeting of April 13th, 2021. I'll call this to order, and I'd take a mover and a seconder to open the meeting. Moved by Councillor Lagasse, seconded by Councillor Baudouin, that this meeting be opened at 7 p.m. All in favor? Carried. We need to...
I have a problem with my iPad. I'll change to my other computer.
Okay, we'll wait for a moment then. In a moment, we need to appoint a recording clerk for this meeting. While we're waiting for Councillor Foisey to rejoin us, I'd take a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Vaillancourt, seconded by Councillor Lagasse. Motion moved by Councillor Vaillancourt, seconded by Councillor Lagasse, that Andre Gagne be appointed as the recording clerk for the purpose of this meeting. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. You're watching Andre in case he needs approval to join the meeting? Okay. Or whoever opens the gateway to Zoom. because quorum is maintained, I'm going to take a mover and a seconder to table the minutes of our March 9th meeting. Mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Lagasse. Councillor Vinecore. Moved by Councillor Lagasse, seconded by Councillor Vinecore, that the minutes of the regular meeting held March 9th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Any issues with the minutes at all? All in favor? Carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Hearing none. Minutes and reports of municipal committees and boards. Planning advisory.
Good evening. We did have a meeting April 6th last week, and we have two new applications, two from this year and one that came forward from last year. And we also have the budget proposal.
Okay, thank you. Fire department. Nothing to report from there. Recreation and fitness. Don't believe it's had a meeting, but there's been some correspondence that appears later in the agenda addressed to recreation. The library did have a meeting on the 15th of March. Their minutes are in our package, and it speaks mostly to their budget submission for consideration for this year's budget. General government has not met. Police services has not met, although there's been an invitation come into my inbox related to the fact that there's been for some time conversation happening related to the structure of police services boards to do with the new Police Services Act that was put in place some time ago. And they're moving more to, or desiring to move towards to, a detachment-based board type system instead of individual municipalities or regions having their own police services board, to reduce some of the number and members required for boards. I have to bring myself up to speed on where they've come with that, because at the last conversation I heard on the subject, the detachment board model wasn't very acceptable to the northern police service boards, particularly of OPP, because of our vastness of geography that are served by the boards. If a detachment, some of the larger detachments in the north of Ontario, the membership, depending on the number of members and the area that they would represent, could be quite large. So whether they've resolved that issue or not remains to be seen. But generally speaking, back in January of 2020, when Member Paquette and myself attended a session, a training session on that in Toronto, the resolution that came forward to the association that day was that they were not in favor in any way, shape, or form of detachment-based police services boards. So whether that continues to be the movement from the province to adopt remains to be seen. Emergency management continues to meet weekly, now on Wednesdays, at 8:30 a.m. related to the local state of emergency that remains in place, and the COVID-19 pandemic is the dominant conversation point in our weekly meetings. In my review this morning of the weekly, or not weekly, it's a daily submission that the province gives us related to all matters of emergency in the province, there's still 225 municipalities. That's out of 344, I believe, in the province. So like 60% of the municipalities still remain under a local declared state of emergency. And there's still 71 First Nations that are under a local state of emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic. So it certainly hasn't lost its validity of being in that situation. As we all know, the province has strengthened its mitigations related to COVID-19 over the past week. And certainly third wave was a term that we were reluctant to embrace only a month ago. And unfortunately, we certainly are right in the grips of the third wave of COVID-19. Our local numbers are starting to rise again, but it's certainly a wildfire in the GTA, and it's resurging in Ottawa and other such places again. So the province third wave is turning out to be, as far as hospitalizations and intensive care unit hospitalizations, by far the worst of the three waves we've had so far. The variants of concern is a term that you hear regularly now. Those are those variations of the virus that have mutated, and thankfully so still remain unaffected by the vaccine. The vaccine still works on them, so that's a good thing. But by all accounts, they are much more contagious and of greater concern by their ease of transmission. They it's much easier to acquire than the first version that we had. And by all accounts, doctors who speak on the subject are saying that, you know, forget the old classic version of COVID-19. If you're getting COVID-19 these days, you're getting one of those variants, because, you know, the original version is pretty much out of style. And these variants have taken dominance in the wave of COVID under wave 3. We welcome back, oh, he disappeared again. I was going to bring Councillor Foisey up to speed on where we were at the moment. I'll wait again. So emergency management, as I said, 225 municipalities still under a localized state of emergency, and we remain as such and meet weekly on the subject. Public Works, I'll hand off to the Public Works Manager just to give us a bit of an update. There's a couple of good suggestions later in our agenda related to crushing, and we're coming to that season of dust suppression tender required again and other things. But by all accounts, it's been a very manageable spring thaw, but I'll let you add more detail to that if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, we did have a very appreciated good spring thaw. The roads are still letting the frost out. However, there's still soft spots here and there as that happens. This weekend, I'd like to thank the patience of our taxpayers. It was an extremely busy day at the landfill on Saturday. We had 540 cars, and it was well mitigated for social distancing, because like every other place, we also have to follow the Ontario health regulations on how many people are there. So I appreciate their patience. Yes, and we're working on our spring projects and getting ready for our budget to be presented to council soon. So I hope that that goes well.
Okay, thank you.
Are we going to have a Public Works meeting pretty soon to decide what kind of work we're going to do this summer, or is it just going to happen in Zoom or in council meetings, or when do we discuss that?
yeah, I think we should have one. It'll be by Zoom in all likelihood, but there's a matter of the grader repair, whether or not we repair the grader, and capital projects, particularly I can think of 2 or 3 pieces of road that are desperately in need of rehabilitation. So we'll need to work towards picking a date. It doesn't have to be in our set first of the month schedule there. We could have a Zoom meeting if it fits everybody's schedule related to that, and adopt a conversation about some of those key points. There's probably others, and that I've not recalling there at the moment, but just the grader alone and the roads work projects for the summer certainly need a conversation. Is there others you can think of off the top of your head?
Like we did discuss before the COVID, resurfacing Development Road, or choosing maybe to do Railway Street. There's just the numbers would have to be updated for the current pricing, and then that discussion could commence.
Okay. I guess for that purpose, then, if you could get those numbers, and again, they're under the COVID environment, everything is so fluid right now as far as quotes on anything. But if you could refresh those numbers and the scope of work on those 3 or 4 items, that would be good prior to us scheduling a meeting. Okay. Welcome back, Councillor Foisey. I just want to bring you up to speed. We adopted the minutes. We appointed a recording clerk, which is Andre, for our meeting. And there was no disclosures of pecuniary interest, which I called for. If you had one, we would entertain it now, or if you wish to declare. And we've covered the vast majority of the committee reports. We were just chatting about public works. There's motions only from planning advisory. Before we move into them, because that leads us to the regular business of the meeting, I'll just skip ahead and we'll do the reports of non-municipal committees and boards. Phenom, as you can or may recall from email that we've received, is a free conference this year for us to virtually attend. They've had a sponsorship that allows us to participate in that. It's I believe just a one-day thing, virtual conference, and no charge to the municipalities. So that's a good way to keep Phenom active and going for 2021 under the circumstances. Conservation Authority, Councillor Lagasse, do you wish to speak to anything there?
We didn't have a meeting yet this month, but in your information, you'll have the 2021 North Bay Matawa Conservation Budget, and you can read that if you choose.
Okay, thank you. And Castleholm, the CAO and I had a virtual meeting with 4 other municipalities, I guess: East Ferris, South Algonquin, ourselves, and Chisholm. Chisholm being the one who gathered us. We thought there'd be other municipalities, particularly the 4 to the east of us, who were members of our economic development group before, but they decided to abstain from the meeting. But the conversation related to the tender for the new construction has now been received. There's financing conversation happening with Infrastructure Ontario, and the City of North Bay has concerns with some of the financing guarantees and are seeking a legal opinion on some of the details. The conversation we had with Chisholm and others was much the same, but more geared to us being smaller member partners of Castleholm. And where we left it was that we would jointly ask the law firm that we use, Russell Christie, and I believe South Algonquin uses them as well, for an opinion if and when documents come our way to share the cost among 4 municipalities as opposed to each of us asking individually. Is that pretty well cover it, CAO Johnson?
Yes, it does. And on Thursday last week, we had our monthly regional CAOs meeting, and we were advised that the city of North Bay let us know through East Ferris that they've had discussions with Infrastructure Ontario and expressed the concerns that have been articulated by a number of municipalities. And so right now we're just waiting on we've been told that Infrastructure Ontario is going to submit a new draft. So as you said, when we get that new draft, collectively we can approach Russell Christie and get a legal opinion.
Okay. And just for everybody's knowledge, there was a non-disclosure agreement that they required all the municipal attendees to sign in a meeting prior to the one we held just with the 4 municipalities. So much of the tender information and the financing information is confidential at this point in time. The board of Castleholm is aware of it, and some of the attendees, myself included, were briefed an overview of it, but it's a delicate situation right now that the tender has been opened for the facility. So they've got to be careful what information they share and hope that a leak doesn't happen, because it would potentially cause some legal liability for them. So that covers the non-municipal committees and boards. Moving back then, the only one we have motions from is Planning Advisory. And the first one is related to consent application B1 2021, Joe and Lydia Bedard, or Joe Bedard and Lydia Boulard. So I would take a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Lagasse, seconded by Councillor Beaudoin. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B1 2021 Joseph Bedard and Lydia Boulard be approved, be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation, along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached Decision of Approval Authority form. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. The next one, application B2 2021, is Aaron Gingras and Dave Boissonneau. I take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Lagasse, seconded by Councillor Beaudoin. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B2 2021 Aaron Gingras and Dave Boissonneau be approved, be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation, along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached Decision of Approval Authority form. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. And then the one, as Councillor Lagasse had alluded to, that was referred for M&R comments back in the winter time, is application B7 2020. It's Ron DeVoe and Cleo de Gagne, and I would take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Vinecourt, seconded by Councillor Lagasse. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council that consent application B7 2020 Ron DeVoe and Cleo de Gagne be approved, be it resolved that Council approves of this recommendation, along with the conditions and notes set out on the attached Decision of Approval Authority form. Any questions on this? All in favor? Carried. The next one relates to the Planning Advisory Committee and their budget. It'll be submitted to General Government for consideration. I'd take a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Beaudoin, seconded by Councillor Lagasse. Whereas the Planning Advisory Committee has recommended to Council to accept the 2021 Planning Advisory Committee budget as submitted, be it hereby resolved that Council refers this budget to the General Government and Finance Committee. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Baudouin. You're muted at the moment.
When are we going to have a general government meeting?
I believe the CAO is just working on getting all the submissions in from the various departments. So we haven't scheduled a date yet.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so we're done motions of committees. There's no notices of motion. We're into introduction and consideration of bylaws. And the first one being 8.1, a first, second, and third reading. Bylaw 2021-10 being a bylaw to stop up and close and sell a piece of the original shore road allowance. I would take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Vinepour. Seconded by Councillor Baudouin. Whereas Council deems it necessary and expedient to pass 3 readings of the following bylaw at this session, but hereby resolved that a bylaw to stop up, close, and sell parts of the original shore road allowance in front of Broken Lot 2, Concession 7, being Part 1, 36R 14462, Township of Bonfield, District of Nipissing, be read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered 2021-10, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Any questions on this one? All in favor? All in favor? Okay, carried. Next one, 8.2, very similar. First, second, and third reading, 2021-11, to stop up and close part of the shore road allowance. Same area. Take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Baudouin. Seconded by Councillor Foisey. Whereas Council deems it necessary and expedient to pass 3 readings of the following bylaw at this session, be it hereby resolved that a bylaw to stop up, close, and sell parts of the original shore road allowance in front of Broken Lot 2, Concession 7, being Part 2, 36R 14462, Township of Bonfield, District of Nipissing, be read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered 2021-11, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. (8.3) A first, second, and third reading of bylaw 2021-12 to award a contract to JL Richards and Associates for consulting services to develop a municipal energy management plan. I would take a mover and a seconder for that, and then if there's any conversation or questions, we could ask them after I read it. Moved by Councillor Baudouin. Seconded by Councillor Vinepour. Whereas Council deems it necessary and expedient to pass 3 readings of the following bylaw at this session, be it hereby resolved that a bylaw to award a contract to JL Richards and Associates Limited for consulting services to develop a municipal energy management plan, We read a first, second, and third time passed in number 2021-12, that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Any questions on this one? A municipal energy management plan is something that's mandated by the province and has to be done. And there's a limited number of consultants out there who do that type of work. Yes, Councillor Vinecourt.
Just one, I guess Hassan will be doing work with them. Or is that, I guess he did the primary background, I guess, up here that I see submitted by Hassan. Would he be working with them in conjunction with this, or is that just strictly a contract for somebody else?
I'll defer to the CAO for information there.
You're right, Councillor. Hassan and Anne were involved in the municipal energy plan we did a while ago. He prepared all the documentation and worked with the ministry to get quotes and to make sure that the proposal that we wanted submitted was in line with what the province wanted. We did get, I believe, 3. One was clearly something wrong with it. It was for less than $15,000. The other one was double what Mr. Richards says, and didn't have a lot of detail in it. The one from J.L. Richards that we're recommending is well in line with the money that the province is going to provide. And as I pointed out in my report, J.L. Richards is familiar with us among their many offices. They have an office in North Bay, and that office was involved in the development of our waterfront plan. So J.L. Richard and his team will be creating the plan and doing the work. The contact point for supervision in our office will be Hassan, as he put the proposal together.
All right, thanks, Peter.
Okay.
Great.
Any other questions on the municipal energy management plan? All in favor? Carried. Moving then into disbursements. I take a mover and a seconder to table the conversation about the disbursements, and then we can ask any questions. Moved by Councillor Lagasse, seconded by Councillor Beaudoin. Before I read the motion, is there any questions related to the disbursements? Councillor Lagasse.
Just one question tonight. It's regarding page 4 of 6, the grader. I see grader rental for March and April. How long do you plan on renting a grader?
We will have to have a Public Works Committee meeting so we can discuss all of our options, whether we want to fix the other grader, if we'd like to purchase a grader, because once the summer comes, the price goes back up to $6,200 a month because it would be used more than it would be in the winter time. So that would have to be part of our process in budgeting for capital this year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Councillor Beaudoin.
On the same grader, have you or could you get some pricing possibly for another grader? I think we've put a lot of money into a grader so far, and I don't know that, it's not my opinion, but I don't know that putting that much more into an old grader versus buying a new one. So if you could get some pricing for our next meeting, maybe?
For sure. Everything's prepared actually. So when we have that discussion, it'll be quick and easy and painless for me. It'll be a big decision for council to make.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Councillor Vinecourt.
How old is that grader? How old is that?
15 years 15? This year. Yeah.
Yeah. parts are going to be hard to get again, eh?
Yes, because Trucks and Wheels no longer is a, they're no longer associated with Case dealerships anymore. Case is working on trying to get a northern hub. Currently, if we were to purchase parts for the grader, we would have to go to Stittsville, which is just outside of Ironprior. Preston's in Sunridge doesn't carry the licensing to sell those parts.
I guess the only thing I'd add to the conversation is the current grader we have, we've put probably $100,000 into it in the past prior to the engine going. The engine, by all accounts, is a standard, is it a Cummins in there, Anne, I think?
Yes, it is.
It should have, it has a blown motor, so it should be rebuildable. And irregardless of whether we keep it and use it as a grader or not, it's virtually a giant lawn ornament right now without a motor in it. So I think what we had talked about, Anne, you and I, was the rebuild is in and around $20,000, and without, you know, putting a further $20,000 into it, it's basically scrap iron. So whether we keep it and use it after we repair it, or whether we shop for a new grader is a conversation separate. But I think repairing it probably is in our best interest, even to resell it somewhere. But we can have a formal conversation about that at another time.
Okay.
Is there other, yes, Councillor Baudouin, disbursement question?
I just have repair garage doors. What's that?
Often in the winter time, the condensation gets up into the motors and then they seize and you can't get the vehicle out. So, you know, you make a decision and cut the cable off so you can get the plow truck out of the garage. And we had other, like we had to get our eyes adjusted so that they meet each other, etc.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Councillor Foisey. You're muted at the moment.
Page 2 of 6. North Bay Matawa Conservation Authority ask funding. $2,033. How, I think, is this our last year for that, or?
Yeah, that's the ski hill donation that we made. I'm not sure where we sit with that. Does any Andre or CAO Johnston have an idea when that donation program concludes?
Subject to verification, I believe that this is the last year you worked.
Okay.
I'll confirm that.
Yes, Councillor Vinecourt.
Just a question on page 1 of 6. Publics or works for the boiler. I guess they put in.
Your question is delayed, you're frozen, but we get the idea what you're asking.
Yeah, so the building department investigated into the cost of our furnace oil at the garage. So we have installed a propane boiler system, and it'll be reflective this year in the difference in cost to heat the building. Because it's only in-floor heating, we also got a blower put in. So every time all the doors are open in the wintertime, all the heat escapes basically out of an open wall. So this blower system heats up the air inside the building quickly enough that it doesn't make the boiler work so hard to keep the building warm, because it is in-floor heating.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Just on that, I think the oil furnace we had was nearing end of life, and it came to a decision of whether we would put a new oil burner in there, which is going out of style, or migrate to something else. And because of the location, the only choice we had was propane. And as I understood it, that's funded under our modernization money that we received from the province to modernize that building a little bit.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions on the disbursements? Okay, I'll read the motion then. Moved by Councillor Lagasse, seconded by Councillor Baudouin, that the following disbursements be approved as prepared. All departments under APO 5683 for a subtotal of $470,706.63, and payroll batches 1134 through to 1140, totaling $88,734.09, resulting in a total disbursement of $559,440.72. Last call for questions on the disbursements. All in favor? Carried. Correspondence and information. A request for a building permit refund from Dave Humphreys. From time to time, when people apply for a building permit, they change their mind and don't put up the structure. And as you can see by the totals in there, some of these building permits for the fees become a substantial amount of money. So in this particular case, the decision, I guess, has been made not to build the building under our policies and under Andrew's deputy building official's recommendation. 70% of the fee is recommended to be refunded to the applicant. So I would take a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Foisey, seconded by Councillor Biancourt. Whereas a request was received from Mr. David Humphreys for a refund of his building permit fees and to rescind building permit 52/2016, and that according to bylaw 2010-6 Schedule B refunds, the percentage for fee eligible for refund is 70%. Therefore, the amount of $845 be refunded to Mr. Humphreys, and that the building inspector be advised accordingly, and that the building permit 52/2016 be rescinded in its entirety. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Carolyn Thompson, a proposal to purchase a portion of the Shore Road Allowance. As we dealt with earlier with two of them, the ability to purchase the Lakeshore Road Allowance on Lake Nosbonsing has been something that the municipality was granted quite some time ago. Some choose to exercise the right to purchase the property directly in front of their lakefront property, that 66-foot strip that belongs to the municipality, and some choose not to. But in this particular case, there's a motion here indicating that we're willing to entertain it, and it directs the applicant of what to do next. I take a mover and a seconder related to it. Moved by Councillor Lagasse, seconded by Councillor Baudouin. Read the motion and if there's any questions related to it. Whereas Carolyn Thompson has submitted a proposal to purchase a portion of the Shore Road Allowance in front of her property on part of Lot 3, Concession 6, Plan NR 993, Part 3, as per their applications and sketches attached. And further, that Carolyn Thompson be responsible for all disbursements incurred by the Township of Bonnfield, and that the applicant submit a deposit of $3,000 to the Township prior to the file being forwarded to the municipal solicitor. Be it hereby resolved that Council approves of this application in principle and advises the Director of Planning and Development to proceed accordingly. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. Item 3, a motion of support regarding the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan extension request. The community of Terrace Bay, I believe it is seeking that the province grant an extension of the community safety and well-being plan process, in that from the outset it was quite an undertaking for municipalities to achieve big objectives, and a lot of work to be accomplished related to these plans. And second of all, the pandemic has not helped in engaging community discussion and other things related to it. So no surprise that some municipalities are seeking an extension to the deadline of it that currently sits at July 1st. I would take a mover and a seconder to entertain supporting this request for support. Moved by Councillor Vinecore, seconded by Councillor Lagasse. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Bonfield hereby supports the efforts being taken seeking an extension of the July 1st, 2021 deadline to the Solicitor General for the submission of community safety and well-being plans, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Solicitor General. Is there any conversation or questions related to this? Yes, CAO Johnson.
Well, just to let everyone know, Your Worship, this one from Terrace Bay was an example that we put on the agenda. There were others that I thought it would be moot. We can explain the reason for the request, but it's not just Terrace Bay. And I'm told by the ministry and several of my colleagues that there are a number of municipalities all across Ontario that are having trouble finishing the plan. When the original deadline was December 31st of 2020, when we were in the middle of the pandemic in June of last year, they extended it to this date, July the 1st. And that was because they had no idea. They had no idea how this was going to roll out. And so we're now into third wave, which, as the mayor pointed out, is even more infectious. The hospitalization rates are higher than they have ever been. So it's not likely that this is going to be over soon. This is a very worthwhile project. It's something that we have to do. Some municipalities got a head start on it, and they're finished with theirs. But a large number of municipalities in Ontario have not been able to complete it. We've been doing a good job of trying to collect data and get ready to get input from the community. But it's very difficult to do when I spoke to a number of people who are they'd rather go to an in-person meeting. And I said, well, that's not likely going to happen. But anyway, the extension is certainly well motivated, and I would encourage, as you're going to do, I hope, is support that extension. But as I said, I just want you to know that it's not just Terrace Bay, it's not just us. There's a lot of municipalities that want this extension.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Item 4, WOR. National Wall of Remembrance Project requesting support. This is something that we've participated in before, I believe. And there's a pre-prepared motion in your package related to it. Andre's nodding her head that yes, we have participated. Is it the same amount in the past?
It used to be $299, and this year it went up to $319.
I see. Okay. I take a mover and a seconder for it if it's still something you want to participate in. Moved by Councillor Vinecore. Seconded by Councillor Beaudoin. I'll read the motion, then if there's any questions. That the Corporation of the Township of Bonfield supports WR National Wall of Remembrance Association in the form of a business card size sponsorship in the amount of $319 plus taxes to support this project. Canadian Fallen is the virtual component of the National Wall of Remembrance in Kingston, Ontario. It is built on the foundation of creating a single place of remembrance for all of Canada's fallen soldiers from the War of 1812 through to Afghanistan. It celebrates the men and women who fell while serving and protecting this great country. Is there any questions? All in favor? Carried. Application for a volunteer firefighter received from Megan Farmer. I take a mover and a seconder to table that motion. Moved by Councillor Beaudoin, seconded by Councillor Vinecore. Whereas Fire Chief Gilles Lebel has recommended to Council that the application submitted by Megan Farmer be accepted as a volunteer firefighter for the Bonfield Township's Volunteer Fire Department. Be it hereby resolved that Council approves of this recommendation. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Integrity Commissioner report, Code of Conduct complaint, Beaudoin versus McLaren. There's a pre-prepared motion to accept the report from the Integrity Commissioner. I take a mover and a seconder related to it. Moved by Councillor Beaudoin, seconded by Councillor Lagasse. Council for the Township of Bonfield accepts the report from the Integrity Commissioner, re Code of Conduct complaint, Beaudoin versus McLaren, as prepared for information purposes only. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Beaudoin. You're muted at the moment.
Yes, I would like, I move to amend the motion in the following manner. To remove the words as prepared for information only, and to change the penalties suggested by the Integrity Commissioner from an apology to the penalty stated at section 223-4, subsection 5, number 2 of the Municipal Act 2001, being the suspension of the remuneration paid to the member in respect of his or her services as a member of council or of the local board, as the case may be, for a period of 90 days under the authority of the Municipal Act 2001, section 223-4, subsection 5, and that the penalty be assessed against Mayor Randall McLaren for the violations of the Council Code of Conduct identified within that report, and further that it will be effective immediately.
Okay, just as a matter of procedure, motions to amend a motion have to be submitted to the clerk prior to the creation of the agenda. So that's going beyond the scope of the procedural bylaw. Your motion to amend is not valid for tonight's meeting.
When I inquired with the Integrity Commissioner and Municipal Affair, this is how they told me I should be doing it.
Mm-hmm. I guess you should have did that prior to the agenda being created, because it's a motion to accept the report, which is a mandate of the Integrity Commissioner that we must acknowledge the report by way of motion. Councillor Foisey, yes. You're muted as well.
Why are we voting on reports that are already posted on the township website?
Again, it's a mandate of the Integrity Commissioner that upon receipt of those reports, that they be posted to the municipal website. So it's not our place to approve or not approve that. It's a directive of the Integrity Commissioner, who is a third-party arm's length appointed authority.
When I inquired with the Integrity Commissioner and I followed a phone call with our Brian Searle at Municipal Affair. They said, when I asked how I do this, this is how they directed me. When the motion is brought forward, I amend the motion accordingly. And then the council votes on that motion, whether they want to vote on it or not, whether this is what I want the motion to read. And then we vote on it, and then it goes from that point. So that's.
Well, again, as a matter of procedure, I'm 17.9 of the procedural bylaw says that if you're seeking to amend a motion, it should have been prior to the adoption of the agenda this evening. So that's all I know about it. If we want to adhere to the procedural bylaw, that's how it reads.
I would like to vote on this. I would like the motion to be amended, and I would like to vote on this.
You would need a seconder. Let's see. You would need a seconder to introduce the motion. The motion would need to carry, and then what you described earlier would need to be introduced for a second vote of council. Is that, I'm looking at my two clerks here. Is that the procedure?
Well, I would like to confirm what Councillor Baudouin said about changing the content in that report is correct. I also had discussions with Mr. King. He told me as late as today that if I asked him if council could amend any content in the report, and he said yes, council could. It would have to be a resolution by council. So that's not the issue. The issue is, as you pointed out, Your Worship, our own procedural bylaw says, and Mr. King wouldn't get into that, nor would Mr. Searle. The issue is not that you can't amend the content in that report and send that back to Mr. King. The issue is that, as you pointed out, 17.9 of our procedural bylaw stipulates that the amended motion needed to have been in the agenda prior to the meeting. That wasn't.
We have amended motions on the fly at regular meetings all the time. So why is this different?
You can explain that, Councillor. I'm just telling you within the procedural bylaw, which is quoted back to me many times. I'm just quoting you what's in the bylaw. Council can do what they wish to do. I'm just pointing out what's in the procedural bylaw.
Yeah, I would still like a vote on it.
Councillor Foisey?
Yes. Can you explain to me like what we're voting on exactly? It says here information purposes.
I'll reread the motion that I have in front of me just for clarity. It was moved by Councillor Baudouin, seconded by Councillor Lagasse, that the Council of the Township of Bonfield accepts the report from the Integrity Commissioner regarding Code of Conduct complaint Baudouin versus McLaren as prepared for information purposes only.
So does this mean that at the next meeting, we will vote on an imposition of penalties?
I'm unclear on that, but I believe there's a final report to be submitted by the Integrity Commissioner, is there not? No. This is the
draft. This is the interim report.
Okay.
This is the Integrity Commissioner's report and recommendation. When I inquired about this, they said, when the motion comes forward, then you have a discussion on it. And if you don't like the penalty or whatever, that's when you would change it and then you would vote on it. This is what I was told by my Integrity Commissioner. And also I followed through with Brian Searle at Municipal Affair.
Okay, as a point of order here, I'm going to disallow your motion to amend tonight only because the recommendations in the Integrity Commissioner's report held no pecuniary penalty whatsoever. His recommendation in his 56-page report was that he found no validity to any of your allegations, aside from the fact that he found the tone to one of my emails to Councillor Foisey that was copied to the rest of council as per the policy that was adopted on June 9th. And I had indicated to council at that point on June 9th that mandate was, first of all, illegal, but second of all, inappropriate. And this is the first occasion 3 days later, on the 12th of June, that it was adhered to. And here we are with the Integrity Commissioner, in fact, quoting that exact policy in his report as saying it was largely inappropriate and unnecessary. I'm not using his exact words there. I could read them if you so choose. But notwithstanding that, he found no basis to any of your allegations in that complaint. What he did find in his course of investigation was the fact that I had chastised Councillor Foisey in the Zoom meeting regarding the wording of a motion and suggested that I apologize for how I chastised him or spoke to him in that regard. And second to that, he further recommended that the tone of my email to Councillor Foisey that was copied to all of council as per the what we'll call the communications policy that was adopted on the June 9th was found to have a condescending and inappropriate tone. And in that regard, his summary and his recommendation was that I issue an apology to council for the tone of my email. And second, that I apologize to Councillor Foisey for my words to him during the council meeting of the 12th of June, I believe it was. And there is no pecuniary mention of any financial penalties in that recommendation from the third party arm's length Integrity Commissioner that did a $20,000 cost investigation into this process. So on a point of order, I'm going to disallow the amendment that you're proposing only because when we started out this meeting, and that's probably the reason the procedural bylaw demands that any amended motions be tabled prior to the meeting for inclusion in the agenda. There was no indication at that point in time that this subject matter and this particular line item, item 6 of our agenda this evening, held any pecuniary relation to me whatsoever. It strictly spoke to the fact that I am required or suggested to apologize to Councillor Foisey and council as a whole for the tone of my email. So there will be no further discussion tonight on the motion that you're choosing to amend. We can either accept or not accept this motion that's currently before us, and the matter is closed. So I will read the motion again and I will call the vote on it. Motion moved by Councillor Baudouin, seconded by Councillor Lagacé, that council for the Township of Bonfield accepts the report from the Integrity Commissioner, read the Code of Conduct complaint, Baudouin versus McLaren, as prepared for information purposes only. All in favor?
I would like a recorded vote, please.
Okay. Recording Secretary Gagne.
Councillor Baudouin, how do you vote?
No. No.
Councillor Foisey?
No.
Councillor Lagacé?
Yes.
Councillor Vaillancourt?
No.
Mayor McLaren?
Or yes. Okay, so the motion is defeated. So tonight we have not accepted the report of the Integrity Commissioner. Moving then to item 7, Another Integrity Commissioner report, conflict of interest, Bodwa versus McLaren. There's a pre-prepared motion related to it. I would take a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Councillor Lagasse, seconded by Councillor Vaillancourt. I'll read the motion. The Council for the Township of Bonfield accepts the report from the Integrity Commissioner re conflict of interest complaint Bodwa versus McLaren as prepared for information purposes only. Any questions?
I would like a
Councillor Bodwa.
I would like you to do a recorded vote also, please.
Request for a recorded vote. Proceed.
Councillor Beaudoin,
No.
Councillor Foisey,
No.
Councillor Lagasse,
Yes.
Councillor Vaillancourt,
No.
Mayor McLaren.
Yes. So that motion is also defeated. We have not accepted the report from the Integrity Commissioner related the conflict of interest complaint, Bodwa versus McLaren. Okay, moving to information. Report to Council, crushing pit material. Perhaps Manager Carr, you'd like to speak to that for a moment. It had a quite detailed and comprehensive report in our agenda package, but in a nutshell, it sounds like a great idea. But go ahead and describe it to us, please.
We use our aggregate pit for what we like to call pit run. So it has small stone and sand mixed with it. It's a very hard material to work with. There's also larger stones that are not able to be worked with. So over the years, I don't know if the pit's ever been crushed. I'm not familiar with that. All the rock has been pushed aside, and it's made it very hard to move around inside the pit. For budget purposes only, I had spoken to someone to get an estimate of how much material that would be there, and it's estimated to be about 5,000 tons. The reason that I'm requesting council's approval this evening is because generally I do buy material for our pit at a much higher cost than what is determined we could have it crushed for. We use 6-inch minus riprap as per Conservation Authority mandates for erosion control to slow down water through ditches. We also could use some B gravel so that when we do have washouts, we're not filling those washouts with our expensive A gravel, and we could be just filling the holes with B gravel and capping it with the A gravel. I would like to tender the process and present the tender results at our next meeting.
Okay. And I guess I'd add to that, typically when we have washouts and things of a surprise variety, like a beaver pond busting and things like that, it's always nice to have supplies at hand rather than having to go shopping for them urgently. Our little stockpiles that we've kept on hand can get used up pretty quickly when you lose a road. So it was probably 20 years ago, I want to say, that we had a crusher back in there. And I think you had said that we've only used up the last of some of that. There was some egg, I want to call it goose egg sized stone that they had screened out at that point in time. And we used that all over the municipality for a variety of things. Came in so handy so many times and saved us tons of money. So I think this recommendation is a great idea.
Thank you.
I take a mover and a seconder related to initiating the tender process on it. Moved by Councillor Lagasse. Seconded by Councillor Vaillancourt. Whereas the Public Works Manager recommends to Council that a tender be prepared to crush, screen, and stockpile 6-inch minus riprap and B gravel from the township-owned pit located on Line 3 South, and that the tender be awarded based on cost per ton. Be it hereby resolved that council approves of this recommendation. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Item 2021 dust control tender info. That is just information for our conversation tonight, in that East Ferris handles that tender process on our behalf. Is that continuing, Anne?
Yes, we do that process so we can, we bid on a bigger amount, so it gives us a cheaper cost. The ad went into the Nugget on Saturday, just passed. So we should have the results in the next 2 weeks. It's a quick tender closing. Just because it's so dry thus far this spring, we would like to be prepared to have that readily available to us.
Okay. Item 3 is the Conservation Authority budget, and as it was spoken to earlier, and from the information in our package, there's a slight increase, I believe, in the, was it or the Castle Home that had a 2.99%? I failed to recall, but irregardless, the Conservation Authority budget submission will be part of our budget package when we have a general government meeting related to the budget. Item 4, DSAB, has reworked some of their procedural and general bylaws, and copied us on it. Castle Home levy, yes, it's the Castle Home levy, I believe, that's up a little bit, and again, it's in our budget submission package. Item 6, NOHSC Heritage Fund grant application related to waterfront master plan type submissions. When this idea was floated to me as an idea a couple of weeks ago, I said, no, I'm not really interested in applying to NOHSC for waterfront master plan stuff, knowing that we have so many roads basically falling apart at the seams right now, despite the fact that the funding is 75% grant and 25% municipal share, as discussed, as in our agenda tonight. It would still take 125,000 municipal dollars if we were successful. So it's in our package for debate tonight. Is there a mover and a seconder to seek applying for this funding? Is that a move or a question, Councillor Baudouin? You're muted.
Move.
You're moving it?
Move.
Okay. Is there a seconder? Councillor Foisey. I'll read the motion. That a grant application be submitted to Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation, NOHSC, for the Rural Enhancement Funding Stream to advance the waterfront development plan as per the Council Resolution number 6 from July 10th, 2018. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Item 7, a letter from Christine Rose regarding the parks. That one, I guess I'd refer that perhaps to the Recreation Committee. It is who it's addressed to, so we'll leave that for tonight, unless somebody wants to table something on it. Item 8, the Recreation Facilities Association. It's an open letter regarding COVID and other such matters affecting recreation. Item 9 is a letter of interest regarding the Bonfield Seniors Housing. It's from the larger case Populaire organization, in that they are entertaining being the financing behind the project. And as the letter describes, they're seeking us as the municipality to be the guarantor of the mortgage. If you read it down, they're still doing their due diligence on whether they can finance it or not, but it will boil down in all likelihood that if the municipality guarantees the mortgage, they'll be able to provide the funding. It was a TD bank finance thing under the original builder that was proposing to build it. They've since changed constructors on that, and they're more open to using other lenders for that purpose. Item 10, the RV bylaw, as the description line indicates, the RV bylaw matter was something that's work that's needing to be done. And we had left it last that the public was to have ability to comment on any conversation of reopening that matter. COVID and our virtual formats aren't as, we're trying to make it as, put the ability there for pro and con related to the RV bylaw conversation to submit. So I did receive a couple of phone calls related to why it was on the agenda tonight, and I encouraged them to share with council the opinions that they had related to the RV bylaw, and they committed to doing so. Has there been any other correspondence or anything come in that we're aware of related to it yet?
There will be more coming before next Tuesday at noon, or Thursday at noon, sorry.
Okay. So you've had some indications on it then from people? Yes, Councillor Vinecourt?
I just want to say I had a few phone calls also. Do we know exactly when our next meeting will be? And we can get something also with Andrew and with Peter. We have talked earlier about some other stuff with the bylaw that can be changed, or everybody have an input on different views of what this bylaw, you know, can do. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has. We left it before. It's complicated in that there's a variety of things that have come to my awareness since we first started talking about it a long time ago, in that some municipalities, and it typically applies to lakefront RVs, they actually issue a license to people to have their RV there for a set period of time. And in that licensing process, they set the expectation of, you know, what the person is allowed to do with their RV on a vacant lot. It all boils down to vacant lots and whether they put RVs on them, in some cases almost permanently. And that's what the zoning bylaw, and that's what this relates to, tried to address, was that, you know, you can't use an RV as a cottage permanently is what it was all about. And you can't use multiple RVs as cottages on a lot either, because that leads to all kinds of problems. So how some municipalities have got around that, and it's the not West Nipissing, but it's the municipality of West Arm, I want to call it, or something like that. They were on CBC radio quite some time ago, in that they had a licensing procedure for RVs on vacant lots. If you don't have a vacant lot, it's really not a concern to us as the bylaw reads. But nonetheless, you've asked a question about, you know, when the next meeting on this will be. Just in conversing with the CAO on it, we kind of came to the decision that it would be the next meeting of council. That is what, the 27th of April on the calendar? Okay. And I would think, because this subject is going to be something of significance, that we'll try and minimize the amount of other stuff on the agenda that night, because I would think it's going to take a block of time to acknowledge the submissions that come in related to it, and then have Doug and others brief us, you know, on what course of action we could take on this.
Okay.
Is there anything, CAO Johnston, that I failed to mention there related to it?
Well, no, I think you've covered it. But just to be an overview on this, the reason why we didn't want much of a discussion about this tonight is because you may recall when we had a couple of public meetings back in the fall of 2019, and the revisions to the zoning bylaw were made, and there was some controversy about enforcement. And the way it was left in the fall of 2019 was that the matter would be brought back to council in the spring before the season opened, and we would have another discussion with everybody about how we go forward. That item was on an agenda that I had posted with Diane for a meeting in March of 2020, and you know what happened. So over the course of last year, what I've said to people is that when we're in a position to have another public meeting, and we now have the tools. Andre can run that. We know how to do that. We can have a meeting if it's next council meeting on the 27th. People will be invited. That's being that will be made clear on our website. People will be able to participate visually and audibly in the meeting, and that's what they were promised. So Doug and I will have information, bring council up to date on where we're at, because as you mentioned, Your Worship, a lot has changed in the province, and quite frankly, to do with RVs. We were told that by Ian Kilgore at that meeting in the fall of 2019. That a lot had already changed, and the province was looking at other amendments to legislation. So we want to bring ourselves up to speed. Doug and I will provide that information to council for that meeting if it is on the 27th. And as you pointed out, we've already had calls from people who want to make submissions, and we've told them that as long as we have it by the Thursday prior to that council meeting, we'll make sure it goes in the package. And you said we'll try and limit the agenda items for that meeting only to those that are absolutely virtual to have, or that's the wrong word. Only those items that are absolutely necessary to be on that meeting, so we can provide as much time to the residents on both sides of the issue to participate in a discussion with council.
So Peter, if they wanted to talk, just come in and like on the phone line, would they have to first put that on the agenda as per a presentation? If somebody wants to do a presentation, so they got to do it before and then put on Thursday. But if you just want to call in or listen in, will they be allowed to speak also?
Well, my understanding is, and you correct me, Andre, you've talked to East Ferris who've done this before, and some of my other colleagues have. But my understanding and answer to your question, Councillor, is yes, they will. They can. We want written submissions because what's most effective for council meetings, and I've tried to do this for the most part while I've been here, is that I don't like when council has discussions about issues for which they have no background. That's not what council's for. So I want to have as much information from the public about their views on this issue. So they'll be able to make written submissions so that you folks will have some idea of what some of the residents are going to say at that meeting. But yes, they will be allowed to speak or be seen as well during that meeting. We just want those written submissions so that you have some background as to what's going to be said.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Yes, Councillor Baudouin.
What about those sea containers? They just seem to be popping up everywhere. Is there anything on those? Peter, you're muted.
Yeah, no, I'm not now, but I was just shaking my head. I'm a little bit frustrated here. I asked that this not be discussed tonight. It's a legitimate question, Councillor. It certainly is. And Doug and I will have some information on that. But we're just sort of, step by step having a discussion about here. And I told people that we would not be doing that.
I just wanted to know if it was going to be on there as well.
Well, no, as I said, it's a legitimate question. And we will have information on that for the meeting on the 27th.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and item 11, clean yard bylaw. There's no such thing as a clean yard bylaw, but we do have a property standards bylaw. and it was encouraged that that be on the agenda. Again, we've sought written public submissions related to the topic prior to a future meeting discussion. So for tonight, I think we'll not set the expectation that that'll be the next meeting of council, because we've already described the RV bylaw as requiring a lot of our attention that evening, but we'll put it as a referred item. New business, there's none that I'm aware of. Unfinished business. Last meeting, there was the topic of the Our Lives Matter flyer, and the fact that information had been provided to me that demonstrated that it was sent out by a member of council. And I had at length expressed my concerns related to that apparent action. But unfortunately, Councillor Foisey could not hear me when I asked him directly if in fact he would indicate whether in fact he had sent out the Our Lives Matter flyer. So I will, as a referred item, ask again this evening, Councillor Foisey, did you send out the Our Lives Matter flyer back in the fall of 2020? Okay, we'll have to leave it as a referred item, and I guess he's having some audio difficulties again this evening. There's no addendum that I'm aware of. Yes, CAO Johnston.
Well, just before you wrap up, Your Worship, I wasn't quick enough. I just want to remind council that on the issue of the seniors housing, part of the reason for sending that letter from the head office case was to let you know that funding partners and so on have been found. They're different from the last project. They indicated in that letter that they will be asking for a financial guarantee. That's a key element in the proposal. But I've asked, and I know everybody's busy, I know that, but I've asked everybody on council to provide as much information back to me in terms of concerns they have or comments they want to make, questions they have, so that again, when they come to council, I want them prepared in terms of what the issues are with council so they can respond to it. Otherwise, we have a long meeting again, which doesn't have as much value to it, is not as effective as if you know, if they know in advance what council's position on. So I would encourage you again, I know you're busy, but if you have any questions or comments about that material or about the project as has been presented to date, even if it's just some questions or comment, doesn't have to be that specific. You want them to talk about this. Let me know that, and I will pass that on to Lise and to Keith Harriman, so that when we do have a meeting with them, it's more productive. Just wanted to mention that I was too slow on the uptake to do that when we left that letter.
Okay, thank you. Moving then to Confirmatory Bylaw 2021-9. I take a mover and a seconder for the Confirmatory Bylaw. Moved by Councillor Vinecore, seconded by Councillor Lagasse. Whereas council deems it expedient to pass 3 readings of the following bylaw at this session, be it hereby resolved that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council from March 9th, 2021 to April 13th, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered 2021-9, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. All in favor? Carried. Take a mover and a seconder to adjourn our meeting this evening. Moved by Councillor Vinecore, seconded by Councillor Baudouin, that this meeting be adjourned at 8:28 p.m. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Oh, quick reminder, those severance applications, all members of council need to go in at some point and sign them.
I will send an email as soon as Randy's signed it, and then advise the rest of council to come in and sign.
Thank you.